inaugural edition of the Lapsed Fancast. I'm one of your two co-hosts, Fro.
And I'm your other co-host, Celeste.
And we are excited to talk to you about anime for the next hour or so. And, so basically, the premise of the Lapsed Fancast is that Celeste and I, we got into contact with each other through the Maid and Abyss Discord channel, and found out that both of us had kind of returned to the world of anime around similar times after maybe not exact amounts of time away from watching anime, but a pretty decent hiatus, so to speak. Myself personally, I know that it was, I would say, at least I was in college, so at least about 7 to 10 years of not really paying attention to what was going on in the world of anime. How about you, Celeste?
Yeah, I was definitely out of the anime world for like a solid 2 years. And then it was like periods of 3 to 6 months in between any given period of time from like 2009 to present.
Yeah, there were definitely times where I would get brought in because something had
Yeah, there were
managed
like
to.
huge like staple shows that came out, and it was like, oh, I have to watch this.
And also, there would be things like the new Miyazaki film, or
hmm
you
Dude just
know,
can't stay in retirement.
no, I can't. And or maybe the movie version of an old show would they'd make a movie for it or something cool like that. Um, for me, I know that part of why I kind of moved out of it was for a very long time my anime consumption was tied to whatever content really made its way over here on network television. And
hmm
so, basically I was not really hostage, but basically what I could get exposed to was tied to what was going on network TV. And after a while, that kind of changed and moved towards some torrenting. I mean, one of my decidedly memorable anime watching experiences was uh, getting all the new episodes of Death Note
Oh,
subtitled
nice.
and watching that with my best friend and watching it turn into the comedic masterpiece that we all know and love it for today.
Death Note as the comedic masterpiece. Nice.
Yeah. um, how about you, Celeste? Was anime more tied to what you could see on television, or as I think I'm a few years older than you, so I'm old. So I know that the whole internet file sharing, some of the nascent streaming stuff, that might be a bit more like what your experience was, but it wasn't mine.
So I'm just gonna talk about how I got into anime and how I first kind of fell away from it, if that's
Sure.
all right with you.
It's a good segue.
Yeah. My very first anime was Dot Hack Sign on Cartoon Network when it was airing in 2002. Of course, I'd watched other anime before. Toonami was a thing by this point, and
Yep.
but I didn't realize that any of that was actually anime. Dot Hack Sign was the first show that I realized was something special. And I wanted to watch more stuff like this, which brought me to Adult Swim. And I followed a couple of shows on Adult Swim, like Trigun and Cowboy Bebop and Inuyasha and Full Metal Alchemist. And I wanted more. I really, really wanted more. So I met a person, and this person introduced me to fan subs. This was
Hmm.
in 2005, and this is how I started watching Naruto. And this was the
Yep.
moment where everything changed. I
I,
couldn't watch dubs anymore. It was all about, and this is also how I became a shonen fan.
totally.
Uh,
Real quick for those out there that aren't necessarily aware of the difference. Dubs are the typical anime where you have the American voice actors redoing the lines for primarily American or other market audience. And subs, or fan subs in this case, are when folks essentially add the subtitles.
Hmm.
Sometimes, essentially having to take some liberties with what was being said, as famously is the case in some, fan translations of shows and manga, written manga. Um,
Hmm.
but continue, please.
So just like piggybacking on a note of that, I was really into. I felt that fan subs were like the quintessential way to consume anime at the time because the voice acting was first off phenomenally better than anything we could get dubbed. Um, it is a recurring opinion of mine that dubs fucking blow.
I
Um,
mean, like yeah, pretty much.
and they fuck up every single time. Like the Funimation, who does pretty much all of the dubs post 4Kids days, would always fuck up the translations. You can always tell, especially as you watch more fan subs. Um, and so after I got into fan subs, like I was really into shonen for a really long time, and between like 2005 and 2010, I collected like 15 shows, like 15 or 20 shows that I was
Hmm.
really into. And I would go back and rewatch and rewatch and rewatch. And I never like felt a need or a drive to go out and find a new anime unless it was like a huge like staple show like Gurren Lagann or Code Geass
Right.
that I would go out of my way to go and watch these shows because everyone I knew was talking about them.
It seemed like they're reliably between, I would say, like 2005 till today, really, and we're going to get into this in a little bit. There's always been at least like one kind of big deal, normally shonen show that kind of like escapes from Japan and has become a big hit
Mm-hmm.
internationally. The way I used to be able to track this was I'm originally from San Diego, California, so I used to go to Comic Con International every year, and every
Ooh,
year there would
jealous.
and every year there would be one big new cosplay thing. 2005, 2006 it was Naruto. The next year it
Hmm.
was Bleach. A couple years after that it was Code Geass, then Attack on Titan, so on and so forth.
Yep, yep.
It's just kind of been like you can kind of figure that out just by kind of seeing what the cosplay landscape is like. Um,
I lived out in the boonies in high school, so we didn't have nice things like
oh,
conventions. Closest convention was the were the conventions up in DC. It was too far to care.
and so when you said that you were really into shonen, for the layperson, what kind of aspects typify a shonen anime?
Right. So shonen is a colloquial term in Japanese for young male. And so a shonen is a shonen show is a show that is aimed at a young, read 12 to 15-year-old male audience. These are typically adapted from manga that's published in Shonen Jump or original stories. They tend to be long form and just continue until they get canceled. Um, these shows are oftentimes battle manga, popularized from shows like Dragon Ball.
Yeah, Dragon
Dragon
Ball.
Ball's
You
kind
really
of
could
like
you really just
the,
say shonen equals shows that remind you of Dragon Ball.
exactly, power levels and fighting and
Friendship.
friendship power. God,
Uh,
I used to be really into friendship power shows, and I wish I could go back and like revisit
I
one.
still kind of am. um, so kind of jumping off of at least the start of your history with anime. For me, where things really got started, I imagine with like pretty much a lot of people in my age cohort, my generation, is with Pokemon. And I was actually just looking this up because I wanted to make sure that it actually existed. And yeah, the very first thing I remember to do specifically really with anime was getting the Pokemon VHS promotional release that was just sent to a crap ton of homes. I don't even know how I wound up with this thing in the first place. I have to go find it too. It's like a crazy collector's item apparently.
Holy shit.
But it was like sent out like 98, so I was like 9 years old, and like my only experience with like anything that came out from Japanese culture was Power Rangers and every other iteration of the Sentai series that had come out at that point. That was really the Power Rangers, so it's like of course I wound up being an anime nerd. But yeah, no, Pokemon was a really big thing, and Saturday morning cartoons really like what was available at the time. I just kind of went back and checked, and thank God Wikipedia has stuff listed out in terms of what was coming out each year, because I can actually tell exactly where it was. Like 1999 on like Fox, they were playing like Digimon and Monster Rancher.
Yep.
And at the same time over on WB, they were playing like Card Captors. So the original card, I forgot that was on there too.
Cardcaptor was on WB?
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
That's crazy.
It was there for 1 year. Actually, yeah, it was there for 1 year, and I remember also seeing it, I think, as part of the Toonami block at one point. And Toonami's a big ordeal.
Cardcaptor was definitely never on Toonami.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
The
The Magical Girl show that was on Toonami was definitely Sailor Moon.
Yeah, because I always remember like the initial block of shows too. So I didn't get the chance to catch it right at the start when they were starting to air stuff like Robotech, but my God,
I remember the very first block of Toonami with freaking Borax from Space Ghost Coast to Coast hosting before they came up with Tom.
Yeah, Tom was rad. I was sad I was sad when Tom died. It's top 10 anime deaths on YouTube.
Yeah.
But really, like, I was looking at this like Wikipedia list of stuff that aired on Toonami, like Ronin Warriors. I was all about Ronin Warriors. I even had my mom get me like the white samurai armor, the saber tooth armor guy. Yeah, it's somewhere in my house. And yeah, no, like for a good, I would say probably, I was just looking at this stuff, like a good like 2 years or so, I was definitely enamored with some of the stuff that was on television pretty much. And then, you know, typical things that happen, like you hit puberty, so, 2002, I was 13, I was like, I want to go do other stuff. Just because, like, I just got into music and everything, and it was also, like, a lot of the series they only showed, like, a limited run, so they kind of just, like, ended as well, and I got tired of watching Pokemon after I saw Ash lose for like the 800th time in any kind of meaningful battle, and they started showing Hamtaro on Toonami, and I was like, okay, I think I need to check out now.
Yeah, that was about the time. I remember I used to watch Toonami a lot back in the day, and when they had the Chibi Gundam show, I don't remember the title. But that was about the time that I was like, okay, Toonami is done.
I was looking at it. Was it SD Gundam Force?
Yes, SD Gundam.
Okay, cool. All right. So we both kind of, there was, a period of time where I would just come in and be exposed to something, whether it be like my best friend being like, hey, you should watch Ping Pong the anime, or like, hey, this Madoka Magica show is rad. And it would just be like one or two things over time. But what was it about kind of like 2017 in general that really brought you back in? Were there any like really extenuating factors that really played a role?
Yeah, definitely. So oddly enough, what really pulled me back into anime in 2017 was Berserk 2017. I did not watch it, but I've followed Berserk since like 2012. And I was reading a thread on the r/Berserk subreddit asking whether or not Berserk 2017 was really as bad as people were making it out to be.
Real quick, can I ask you 2 questions, Celes?
Yeah.
One, if I don't know what Berserk is, can you tell me what Berserk is? And two, is it the kind of anime you'd recommend to somebody just getting back into anime?
Um, no. um,
That was a loaded question. I fully cop to it. But
okay, sorry.
no worries. Continue.
So Berserk is a series that's been coming out for like 30 years at this point. It started publishing in the 80s. It's a fabulous 10 out of 10 manga. It's probably the best ever made, to be completely frank. It got a really good anime adaptation in 1997 that everyone should go watch.
It was a limited form OVA kind of thing, right? Or was it like
Yeah,
okay?
yeah. And it had great animation and it told the Golden Age arc really well.
Yeah.
Good place to start with Berserk, I think.
Totally. So this is one of the things that kind of can make anime a little bit of a not really a challenge to kind of keep up with is that for the longest time, especially if you didn't want to dedicate a whole hard drive to holding on to stuff, it would just be really hard to track down things. And
it's still pretty hard to find.
It is
Berserk 97. Like you have to go and look for it.
Yeah, I'm sorry I cut you off in the middle of your story though.
Right. So Berserk is just kind of like it's a dark fantasy story. It takes dark fantasy to all of its extremes, and it tells a really good narrative. Well-defined characters, but it's dark. I'm not one to call a show dark. In fact, I'm probably going to make fun of like half the shows we're going to talk about later. Because people say that they're dark, and they're not
dark.
They're not dark. Okay, Berserk is the standard bearer for dark.
Awesome. So it's less happy-go-lucky, fun adventure time, slaying dragons, and more like Dark Knight of the Soul kind of stuff.
Yeah, pretty much.
So you were on a message board that had to do with at least the Berserk manga, and you were you kind of become privy to a conversation about the ongoing 2017 adaptation. And then what happened?
Right. So in this thread, I found someone had linked a video to Super Eye Patch Wolf, who is a anime YouTuber, and he was just basically saying that Berserk 2017 really was the shit. It was garbage. And so I kind of liked his voice and I liked the way he sounded, and so I started perusing his other videos. And eventually I found my way to a recommendation for a little show called Puella Magi Madoka Magica, which was released in 2010. And I went and watched this show and I was hooked. Like, this was it. This was the moment.
See, it's funny because one of the things that also really got me interested in wanting to do a podcast with you is that what kind of really kick-started my like return in full and earnest to anime and the anime community was also videos by Super Eye Patch Wolf. His videos on Hunter x Hunter, or Hunter. Oh my God, that's embarrassing.
Hunter. I'm gonna call it Hunter x Hunter.
I have like two friends.
I know it's
not
the
who pronounce it both ways. They're all both gonna kill me.
I know it's not the proper way to pronounce it because the X is supposed to be silent.
Right.
But, it was that Hunter x Hunter video that had that recommendation for Madoka Magica.
Right. So the Hunter x Hunter video and the Hajime no Ippo video.
Shout out to Super Eye Patch Wolf.
Yeah, pretty
for
much.
being amazing.
And I was like, oh wow, there's a lot of stuff I missed. And then I started to become aware of why now it felt like there was just a lot more ease of access, and it's that a lot of the streaming sites finally got their shit together, and now it's to the point where simulcasts are kind of becoming a common thing. You don't have to really wait an interminable amount of time to get the subtitles for new episodes, and
exactly.
Now basically following the footsteps of Netflix and Hulu, Crunchyroll and other affiliated streaming websites have really started to put together a really coherent library of things, and it's kind of like, oh, between that and the Anituber community on YouTube, which is essentially the critical anime review and commentary community comprised of figures like Digibro and Super Eye Patch Wolf, Glass Reflection, yes,
Pedantic Romantic,
yes,
best guy ever.
Yeah,
and let's not leave any YouTuber unmentioned. There's also Jeff from Mother's Basement.
Yeah, no, all those people, and between, sorry, I lost my train of thought slightly. Between all that, it's kind of like, oh, it's like, it kind of like hit me in the face. It's like, oh, this stuff's actually really accessible now. And I just kind of dive back in, and I've tried to spend time evenly between keeping up with what was going on this year and what has been going on the last several years, to the extent that, like, when I've seen people talk about how 2017 was a very even year, I was kind of like, it's just my experience, but I'm only used to like getting like one really good anime a year, and it feels like last year had a handful of very good anime come out.
2017 felt pretty special to me.
Yeah, and that's pretty much exactly how I feel too. So I think if you're ready, I'm ready to move on to talking about the year that was 2017 in anime, even though it's March and everybody that already did review videos did so 2 months ago. But I really want to talk about some of the stuff that, really captivated my imagination alongside a lot of the more classic and highly regarded stuff I've been watching, as I imagine you've been watching as well, Celes. Let me think here. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to kind of give a general run through of the year that was 2017 based on the Crunchyroll Awards. And we both have kind of like the actual winners up front. We basically tried to watch as many of the winners as possible. There was, I think, 2 shows we did not see. I think of the winners, we did not watch March Comes in Like a Lion.
Nope, definitely didn't get to Sangatsu.
So
I've watched everything else though.
And I think I've seen everything at least partially. So that's the best we can do. And we're going to start off with kind of referring back to big shonen shows that captured the mainstream anime audience and result in a absurd amount of cosplay, and start with My Hero Academia, also known as Boku no Hero Academia, also known as Hero Academia, also known as any goddamn combination of the names.
I will be referring to it as Hero Aka, but there are legitimately like 10 ways to refer to this show.
Totally. And so this year saw the second season of the show, and full disclosure, I basically marathoned the first 2 seasons, so a lot of my thoughts are going to kind of be both seasons.
Yeah, they're going to run together.
Yeah, that's how it's going to work. And yeah, basically the premise of My Hero Academia, if you've not... I don't want to say you've been sleeping under a rock because that's rude. But if you're really just trying to get back into anime and you're looking for something cool and new to check out, is basically in a world very comparable to our own, there was a development in human evolution such that human beings started to develop their own superpowers known as quirks. And we kind of, it's not really a flash forward, but the setting is that at the point in time, just about, I think 90% of the world's population has some form of superpower, which range from just ungodly, crazy imaginative displays of power to a dude who can literally stretch his eyes out of his eye socket, and that's his power. And I really like that character because it's hilarious. It's like in their middle school class.
My personal favorite worthless quirk in Hero Aka is Deku's mom, who is able to do telekinesis on small items,
See,
but
so
only on small items. You can't do it with like big stuff.
so some of the powers are very, very specific, and a lot of the other ones are just like grossly like I could just do a bunch of crap, I guess. So, but no, really, what's really cool about My Hero Academia is that it is again pretty much another permutation of the superhero genre, and I can already hear some of you folks already just clicking off this podcast and going, "I don't want to hear about goddamn
Don't stay
superheroes
here.
again."
Aka's really good.
It's really good. Like it's one of those things where like I definitely approached my friends that were kind of more with it with anime, and I was like, "Is this show like as good as like?" Because there's an uneven track record of the big anime of the year kind of actually being good or just kind of being able to capture the zeitgeist.
The perfect counterexample to good anime is always good is Sword Art Online.
And
It's definitely a fucking train wreck.
Which would be like literally everybody else in pile on SAO. Well, we'll just avoid the topic entirely. But no, really, My Hero Academia is really good at character building and world setting. It builds a very believable world in which heroes are many things. They are symbols of peace as well as like status icons and celebrities that have very specific municipal and government style jobs, but also like can advertise and shill for stuff too, and what that kind of means for the world. And very much so, like, is the problem with a lot of superhero fiction. You get a lot of either, in most cases, you get either the heroes or the villains. And I would say this about My Hero Academia is it's really about the heroes, especially pretty much all the way up through midpoint of season 2. I mean, there are some pretty cool villains, but I have a little established rule, which is if I have to do a concerted effort with the headcanoning, I think that it's one of those weird things where it's like if I have to like really think and invent a bunch of stuff based off of something to like make it plausible or like make it rich or thematically meaningful, it's like I think I'm working overtime on this. That's not something I should be doing.
Especially in a shonen.
Yes, especially in this style show. Also, My Hero Academia is genuinely funny. Like the comedic timing and a lot of the character beats are you definitely laugh out loud funny, and a lot of the character arcs that occur in season 1 and 2. Oh, actually, if I was to give one big bit of praise to this show, the pacing is both lightning quick and I guess like effervescent. There's like not a wasted moment in the show, which is astounding.
It's wonderful,
especially for like a shonen show. And as if you have,
like shonen shows are like historically horridly guilty for just taking every shortcut possible.
2 words.
And Hero Aka doesn't do that at all.
2 words. Filler arc.
Oh God.
Celes, what did you enjoy the most about My Hero Academia?
My favorite thing about Hero Aka is seeing how the different characters bounce off of each other. Specifically with Deku. I think if you take Deku as a center point, and you can
Bakugo.
Yeah, Bakugo relationship with Deku is so different from Todoroki's relationship with Deku, right, which is way different from Uchaku's relationship with Deku. And it's just seeing so many character relations that are fundamentally different and all work well in the same setting is just wonderful. I think it's really what allows this show to stand above other shonens.
Yeah, no, the character interactions are fantastic, especially Deku's interactions with All Might, his mentor, and the
All Might's great.
The erstwhile Superman figure who is fantastic. I thought I would get because at first you have this initial impression of maybe what the show is kind of conveying by the aesthetic and the look, and I just took one look at All Might, and I was like,
I almost dropped this show because of when All Might was first introduced, I was like, no, this isn't for me.
and I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna enjoy that character that much. And now I'm like all the way through season 2, I'm like, All Might's the fucking best. And the show doesn't trade in a lot of lazy tropes, although it does engage in some light fan service. But
it's fine. A little bit of fan service can be tasteful.
Yeah, I feel that's gonna be a theme throughout the rest of the show. I'm trying to think like obviously it has a season 2 had a tournament arc, which is a very big staple of shonen series, and the tournament arc they had here carried out in a way that allowed the show to highlight just a plethora of really interesting characters that are classmates of Deku. And the following Stain arc really got to show a bit more of the actual world outside of the walls of the school, which was interesting too. Mm-hmm. And as well as the internship. And I mean, really, I find My Hero to be just a show that excels at pretty much everything you could ask an anime to do. It's got brilliant moments of incredible animation. Rarely has anything looked lazy in its execution. The music's cool. Both opening themes are hype as hell.
I do not like Peace Sign.
Oh, okay.
But I like the other one.
Is it You Say Go, I think?
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
The OP for the second half of season 2 was good.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, I don't have any additional thoughts. My Hero won like every award.
So just make it concrete here. Hiroaka won Best Girl for Ochaku, Best Boy for Todoroki, Best Hero for Deku, Best Villain for Stain, Best Action, Best Opening for Peace Sign, which is garbage, Best and Best Animation. So it won 7 awards.
And there were only about like 13 or
and
14.
it only deserves like 2 of those awards. Because Deku is definitely Best Hero, and Stain is definitely Best Villain for this year.
It was really strange that the year was full of really good shows and not really good villains, except for any like continuing series. And most of those didn't get nominated because the awards tend to favor new series as opposed to ongoing series for the most part.
Character awards are popularity contests, which is why Hiroaka won all the character awards.
Yeah, pretty much. Do you have any more thoughts about Hiroaka, or should we move on to Maid Dragon?
So I will say, just like bouncing off what you said about the tournament arc, that the tournament arc, like, it is really good, even in like comparing it to good shonen tournament arcs. I don't think it's better than the Dark Tournament from Yu Yu Hakusho.
I mean, nothing's gonna be better than that.
But
I'm gonna put my foot down. That tournament arc.
So I'm not saying it's the best tournament arc of all time, but it's in the top 5 for certain. This tournament arc is amazing, and it's not just a bunch of fights. It like showcases the characters in a bunch of different situations. And then another thing is the Hero Killer Stain arc, which it just thematically it makes Hiroaka it gives Hiroaka a level of thematic richness that it didn't have before the Hero Killer Stain arc, and that it just enriches the experience so much.
Absolutely, it's one of those instances where the villain kind of showing up has ramifications that are immediately felt and reverberate. So it's
yeah, for sure.
All right, so I think Celes, you're going to handle. We're going to talk about the winner of the Best Comedy Award at the Crunchyroll Awards. Take it away.
All right, so the winner of Best Comedy was Kobayashi Sanchino Maid Dragon, or Kobayashi's Maid Dragon. This anime is about a dragon who turns into a maid girl and begs this character Kobayashi to let her clean for her. She wants to live with Kobayashi. That's really what the show comes down to, is just dragons wanting to hang out with Kobayashi. So first off, I will say that the characters in Dragon Maid are top freaking notch. They are just amazing. They're incredibly well written, and anybody who's a nerd and has like worked at all in an adult capacity will be able to relate to Kobayashi.
Mm-hmm.
She's great.
Kobayashi, she's best girl.
She is best girl. Okay, she's not in Hiroaka, so she didn't win, but she should have.
So I'm just gonna cut in real quick because I'm gonna tie two things together. I kind of forgot to mention that My Hero was the studio that produced it was Studio Bones, and the studio...
Oh yeah, sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. I forgot. It's and what I wanted to say really just briefly is that both Studio Bones and the studio that did Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, which is Kyoto Annie, are both just phenomenal at real action scenes, but the real charm of Dragon Maid is in the quieter, more emotionally resonant moments and just the slice of life aspect of it. And I think between the two shows, you can kind of get like a little hint at the breadth of quality anime in the world right now. So just gonna like leap back into Hero Talk for a second, and now we can keep on talking about Dragon Maid.
Yep. So Dragon Maid is made by Kyoto Animation. Kyoto Animation is the studio that did like wonderful projects like Nichijou and K-On! And The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. So they're really, really good at doing these kind of like light-hearted rom-com slice of life shows. They were definitely the right studio to do Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. Kind of like returning to the synopsis here for a minute. This show is it introduces 4 dragons, I think, maybe 5, but I'm pretty sure it's 5.
Because it's Toru, Kana, Fafnir, Luqua, and then
Elma.
Elma. Yes, Elma. She eats every time she's up there.
And this show is every episode. It just puts these characters in the situations. The dragons don't really understand like how to behave in what we would consider normal world situations, and so watching them try to adjust is hilarious. Kobayashi's deadpan look on the world is hilarious.
As well as her cute dead fish eyes.
Yes. Kana is the cutest thing that ever was and ever will be. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so that's Dragon Maid. It's just dragons being funny.
Totally. So when we say dragons, essentially, it's it could be a little confusing. It's not necessarily that they're all maids, but they are essentially giant mythical dragon creatures that, in the context of the show, take the form of cute, adorable, chibi girls and women, except for one who takes the form of a very cute dude. And basically, it's one of those weird things where the show is essentially, it plays with a few different genres. It's definitely like it is outright fantasy, especially the first couple of episodes where we get introduced to Toru and Kana. They have a play fight scene that just comes out of nowhere that is like Dragon Ball quality, just insanity.
It's so good.
And so it trades in fantasy, but it definitely trades a lot in romance and slice of life, and a lot of like family oriented themes. A lot of the commentary about this show that's been really interesting and insightful that I've paid attention to has really dealt with Kobayashi and Toru and how they kind of build this really unconventional and quirky family around themselves and the various other dragons and humans that kind of become interconnected just by the mere fact that they're all like either housing or in poor Shota's case being haunted by a dragon in the form of a human being. And it kind of tackles a few like so Tana, who is the smallest dragon, decides that she would like to get enrolled in the
The
neighboring
local, yeah, the local elementary school.
yeah, the little elementary school to kind of like fit in and see what it's like and everything. And there's a little like slice of life aspects that are just like supercharge the fact that it involves like crazy powerful mythical dragons, like a schoolyard shuffle or a scuffle over arbitrary control of a neighborhood park turns into like the world's most dangerous game of volleyball. It's amazing. And the show is like equal parts just phenomenal scenes and equal parts like character work and meaningful emotional sequences. And I mean, the show has made me laugh and cry and be astounded by really small things portrayed in a really novel and fantastic light. And it's definitely one of the reasons why I'm really excited for where anime is going to go from here on out, and was one of the first shows I came to just because one of the other aspects that's kind of made anime more popular is the spread of memes on the internet. I think I've become aware of multiple shows because of memes, and definitely Maid Dragon has a lot of popping visual aspects that make it amenable to a visual medium like memes are. So, I was really, really impressed by the show. And I guess if the question is if I'd recommend it to folks, especially if they're coming back into anime, I would say yes. There are a few aspects of the show that are a little hard to grasp initially, even beyond the premise of a mythical creature wanting to be almost a typical cosplay maid servant to a programmer. But I think that the show definitely rises above any of the depths that the fan service could drag it down to. So, and there's plenty of fan service in the show.
There's
Way more.
My least favorite character, her only gimmick is that she's a fan service character, and it's terrible.
Yep, pretty much. Was there any? Would you recommend the show to somebody that was kind of like floating back into the world of anime?
Unless you're the kind of person who just hates slice of life shows, I would 100% recommend this. It's cute, it's endearing, it's hilarious.
I mean, we're not even that mad that it won Best Comedy, even though I think we might agree that there's another show that came out this year that was like flat out funnier. But the show is definitely funny enough to like warrant that award.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do we have any more thoughts about Maid Dragon? The OP and the ending theme are incredibly catchy. Oh my god!
Okay, so there's actually a story about this, right? Because Maid Dragon also won Best Ending for Ishukan Communication. At first, I hated Ishukan Communication. I was not a fan of this track.
How could you not like it?
I just didn't like it. It wasn't until I went back and like watched it again to vote in the Crunchyroll Awards that I was like, oh, this is actually better than I remembered.
All right. I mean, I liked it pretty much right away. I liked this, like everything about this show right away, and it's definitely been one of the series that I've like gone back and rewatched when I just had some spare time. I'll like pop
Hmm.
on an episode if I just want to watch something where I don't have to like.
What's your favorite episode?
Oh man, that's a good question. You know, I actually really liked the episode. I kind of tend to not remember the episodes, but I remember the parts.
What's your
The
favorite part then?
Well, the parts that definitely come to mind immediately are um, the bit where they focused on Fafnir living with
Uh,
Kobayashi's coworker.
Takia.
Yeah, Takia, and I was like, I really enjoyed that
It's like
because
the one of the best bromances I've ever seen in anime.
yeah, it's great. Takia's a dope guy. I was at first I was like, oh man, because like the first episode kind of sets up some like red herring possibilities when it comes to Takia
Hmm.
and Kobayashi, but then it just turns out he's a solid bro. I'm like, oh cool, good.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
oh, and also the convention episode is amazing too because it's one of those things where a lot of what is compelling about the interactions between Kobayashi and Toru, which but are like the driving importance of the show, and it's really really well done. There's a scene where like a lot of it has to do with like Toru kind of like charging in, like grabbing hold of the situation energetically and like really just being involved, and Kobayashi just never really having that energy.
Yeah,
She's just not. She's a very solid like. I operate if like the needle goes to 11, I'm at 4, and that's it. Please don't make me turn up any louder than that.
yeah,
Whereas Toru was like, I'm at 11. Oh my god! But also not. I want to make sure. I want to convey that Toru, unlike a lot of energetic or Genki characters, is not obnoxious about it either. So that's another thing that's really good. But in the convention episode, there's a part where it's like Toru kind of like is like a bit like trying to like get into like I want to do something that's a bit like like it's like, oh, in other contexts it would be like frightening or draw attention, and Kobayashi's like, go ahead, and it's like one of those like character beats, and it's just like, oh,
hmm
this is really cool to like see this kind of play out in the relationship. It felt very uh it's real. This is the right word to go with.
yeah, yeah.
How about you? What were some of your
Uh,
favorite
so
parts of the show?
my favorite episode was definitely the Kotatsu episode.
Oh my god, yes, that.
And I love this episode so much because it's super comfy. The whole episode is just them interacting with this Kotatsu that they want, and it's wonderful.
And
And what I really like about this episode is that it's later in the series, and it's the first time you actually get to see Kobayashi and Kana and Toru be a family, like in a serious setting, after they've already dealt with most of their issues. Like, um, this is the potential that the relationship has. It's showcased perfectly in this Kotatsu episode, and I really appreciated that.
and I really want a Kotatsu.
Yes!
And if you don't know, a Kotatsu is essentially a giant comforter set on top of. It used to be like a hot coal, but now it's just like an electronic heater that goes underneath. I think
Yep,
typically a glass table or like a.
it's a table, a space heater, and a blanket.
It's just a giant comforter blanket. You basically just like sit around the table with like your legs underneath, and you just sit there and do nothing all day.
Yeah, it's great.
Um,
Uh,
all right, so now I guess we can probably move on to talking about what I imagine is the denier, or nadir, sorry, nadir of our podcast, which is we're going to talk about Hoseki no Kuni, or Land of Lustrous, which won Best CGI. And every single commentary about this show essentially kind of boils down to, oh my god, in a year where Berserk 2017 showed us how awful CGI animation can be, look at this shit. Isn't this awesome? And it's basically I hate to boil down because I know a lot of the critical anime community has actually like spent time talking about the themes addressed in the show, but like, okay, I'm gonna do the synopsis first. So basically, the setup for Hosuke no Kuni or Land of the Lustrous is we are on an alien world that appears to be like one landmass, a ton of water, and a weird Greek style building that I think is referred to as the school or the classroom, I want to say. And we're essentially kind of introduced to the denizens of this world and this classroom, which are I think it's like 80. It's not 80. It's like, I can't remember. Oh, 28. That's right. It's right here in front of me. There are 28, or actually technically 29 beings living on this planet. 28 of them are essentially magical girls in the form of gem-like beings. Like they're comprised of microbes that like take on a gem-like form, and each of them are named after a quintessential human gem, or not human gem, sorry, quintessential gemstone, or I think some of them are named after elements. I'm not
They're all
exact.
named after
They're all
gemstones.
named after actual gemstones. Okay, cool.
Um,
And the
or crystalline structures in
right,
general.
and we're kind of given like little glimpses of like at least as the story unfolds, we're introduced to the concept that each kind of gem has a certain degree of strength or hardness, like resistance to being broken apart. And this is important because pretty much every day, this classroom, this giant building full of these gemstone girls, are besieged by bizarre Buddha-esque themed aliens from the moon called the Lunarians. They're
Hmm.
all like they appear out of the sky on a cloud, and these very very Eastern religion esque shaped beings just fire a shit ton of arrows everywhere. It's pretty cool. Um,
The show
and
is not cool.
okay, well, let me just finish real quick. And like,
Sorry.
it's up to the gemstones or gems to fight off these beings, and it's basically a giant war of attrition because the characters. I got through episode 6. The characters express like, I don't know how long I've been fighting for, and our story kind of revolves around one gem in particular, phosphofolite. We call her Foss. Foss is actually I kind of like Foss. Foss is a very kind of moody, rebellious, but unfortunately incredibly fragile gem that is uh, among the youngest of the gems. But the gems have all existed for thousands or hundreds of years, so it's kind of weird like that. It's very much reminiscent of Steven Universe if you watch that on Cartoon Network. Um, and the gems are led by the one non-gemstone being on the planet who's the master of the gems, Kondo, who's like a giant monk who can do some magic power stuff. And yeah, it kind of just deals with how much of a dumbass Foss is. That's kind of been my experience with the show so far. Uh, this is one of those shows that trades in a lot of like there are more anime that are successful with like we're gonna have some meaningful introspection about like who we are and what our place in the world is, and the show kind of tries to trade on that while being in a very alien world and being very slow to reveal what the hell is going on, to the point that even by episode 6 and 7 it's starting to become kind of clear what has happened on this planet. But I don't know. It's one of those things where it got a season, but it might wind up looking a lot better after season 2 if it ever happens is complete. Again, that's another thing that I hear from a lot of folks that like this show and are trying to uh, praise its story, which I don't think resonated with either of us.
I hated this show. I think So I'm just gonna kind of talk about my thoughts on this show for a minute, if you don't mind.
The floor is yours.
Um, so the show won Best CGI for the Crunchyroll Awards, and that is the one thing that this show did right. The CG is really good, and there are some really great shot compositions. The animation looks fantastic most of the time. The show also got a really good soundtrack. It's a good listen. Unfortunately, that's all this show did well. The characters are completely bland. Phosphofolito is this baka airhead who does nothing right, and she's bland and boring, and she's not funny, she's not endearing, she's just kind of there. And that's really the story with like all of the characters in this show. Which is kind of unfortunate because the setup for this show is kind of interesting, right? Because you're introduced to this like hyper utilitarian society, and you have your main character, Fos, is so brittle that she has no utilitarian value in this society. And rather than try to do something interesting with Phosphofolito as an actual, or trying to find like interesting qualities of Phosphofolite to enhance her character, they get rid of the phosphofolite that makes up Phos. So this is they try to do interesting things with Phos, but every time they fail, they throw away what they've done and try something new, and it always fails and it always falls flat, and it just really drags this whole show down. Beyond that, the narrative is boring and bland and barren. The environment is boring and bland and barren. Side note, for a show that does a boring, bland environment well, go watch Trigun.
I will say this, I kind of did enjoy the underwater aspects of episode 5, I think it was.
Oh, the one episode that's underwater is pretty good.
Yeah.
It's okay.
But yeah, it is a lot of like fighting against the sky and like, you know, weird perspective shots. Because again, most of the time the fights are ground versus air because the gems have to fight the Lunarians. They're in the sky. So it's a little limited by that. I also kind of like the musical cue for the Lunarians. They have a weird, spooky...
Oh yeah, it's like kind of like Chinese suspense music. It's pretty good.
Yeah, their whole aesthetic is almost more interesting than most of the gems. Which is like, it's so weird for a show to like, yeah, again, as bizarre. The protagonist or the antagonist are supposed to be like this like mundane looking unified force that's not, you know, everyone looks the same, is kind of visually more interesting than the individualized gems in their black suits. I just, you know, there's nothing about the show so far that's, besides just kind of like how well the CG is, that has really like motivated me to want to really even finish it, to be honest with you. I might eventually. It's there on Amazon. You know, actually, I think. Oh, thank God, no. Both My Hero and Maid Dragon are not on Amazon. They're on Crunchyroll and other services. Yeah, no, thank God. Yeah, no. I actually just looked because the studio that did it, if I'm correct,
is Studio Orange.
Yeah, Orange. And
they're like a new studio.
Okay, I was gonna ask because like I'm looking at the other stuff that they've been tied to, and none of it, even from my like, you know, for both of us, we're coming back into anime, and so there's got to be like a grace period of like, what, like, we missed a bunch of stuff, so tell us what to kind of find, and we're gonna kind of fill in the blanks ourselves too. But like none of the stuff looks like stuff that was talked about. Black Bullet, I guess, Under the Dawn. Are so any of these
Orange has 14 entries on Mal.
Right.
And the only other show that they've done that I've heard of is Dimension W.
Okay. So they're newcomers. So exactly, yeah. It sucks that like it's one of those things where sometimes there's to be a big hype audience for something like this. Um, it isn't always something to do with how visually striking the show is, but I think it's been the case for some other shows in the past as well. The thing that kind of compounds it with Hoseki no Kuni is that it's the CG aspect of it, and there's this long-standing history of CG's usage in anime being very not good. So you can understand the hype, and then it's really unfortunate that it just doesn't seem really captivating, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yep.
And I think I kind of want to move on to something that you absolutely friggin' adore.
I'm ready for it.
Okay.
Oh, just to make it clear, I would definitely 100% not recommend Hoseki no Kuni to anybody.
I mean, like, if it was just like, so like, I was want to say, like, if I was going to recommend an anime that has a very similar premise, I would say go watch Steven Universe.
Steven Universe, which isn't even an anime, is a better anime than Hoseki no Kuni.
Okay, that's a good line. It's a good line to end our talk of this show about. Let's go ahead and move on to
Girls' Last Tour, or Shoujo Shumatsu Ryoko.
What is the show about?
This show is about two girls on an adventure through an apocalyptic world.
Ooh.
This show, we follow Chito and Yuri as they're going around on this tractor truck through the ruins of
it's like a motorbike tank.
Yeah, it's like a motorbike tank tractor trailer. They're the only characters in the show that have a working vehicle, which is kind of cool. Although that doesn't really say much, because they're also pretty much the only characters, with a few exceptions in this show.
Yeah.
And this show, it's a slice of life show. It's the best atmospheric show that I've watched all year. It really does a great job of like highlighting these girls experiencing things that we would take for granted for the first time, and highlighting just how much we take those things for granted. Like, for example, there's an episode where they find an apartment, and it's the first time they've had the opportunity to sit down in a chair in perhaps their entire life, and it's one of the greatest scenes in this show. But this show it's just a bunch of scenes like that. Chi and Yuri go and do stuff out in this world, and you get to experience this world with them.
I would say
there is a little bit of plot and exposition that comes at the very end, but this show is like, it's a very actively show don't tell kind of story.
Yeah, I will say this: it and Maid Dragon both have phenomenal first episodes. I was
absolutely.
I was really impressed with just kind of like, because I had gone ahead and there's enough 2017 in review kind of articles or videos that addressed Girls' Last Tour. I knew what I was getting myself into in terms of like, oh, this is really cool. At least I knew what the premise was, and the first episode does a really good job. I guess my maybe less than as enthused as you are, Celes, opinion is almost like I kind of wish there was a bit more of like that episode 1-ness to more episodes in the run, and it just wasn't. But that's okay. It's one of those tough things where, like, especially if you are trying to lend a critical eye to an anime, no matter how much you want to couch it in, like, yeah, but you wind up like on one end of the threshold of it's great or it's not great. And for me, it's like one of those things where it's like I think it's really good, and I totally understand where the show's coming from, and I think from a very technical perspective, it's very well executed. But it's just one of those things that I didn't get as much visceral enjoyment from watching the show, and I'm almost done with it, to where I could say it was a great show. And I think that its particular blend of slice of life and philosophical aspects and the way it approached it had just too few peaks for the amount of, not really like valleys, but the amount of like plateaus it kind of had. And I would be hard pressed myself to recommend it to somebody that's coming back into anime, unless they. Unless they like, it's one of those weird things. Like, if you really, maybe if you like really like Maid Dragon, you'd wind up a show like Maid Dragon really wind up coming to Girls Last Tour and really enjoying it. But I also like Maid Dragon a ton too, so I don't know how really to convey my particular opinion of it. It's one of those weird things where it's like I totally get why you're enthused about the show.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy Cheeto, especially her design and her just a lot of her parts of the conversations. It's great. Yuri kind of got hold on me after a while. I know she's like, she kind of like really carries the comedic heft of the show, and I get that. But like, essentially,
Yuri is kind of an idiot, and it's adorable.
Right. I'm like, it's one of the things, like, there's an episode that has to do with, so part of the world building aspect that is at least definitely investigated or at least expanded upon in the show is that the ability to read is no longer like commonplace in this state of the world. And
Cheeto can kind of read.
Yeah, and so that they kind of build on that in order to use the ingredients in a rations factory in order to make rations. That's the episode, kind of, is that. And in my mind, I can see like 3 scenes that episode, and I'm just like, okay, that's it. I just don't have it wasn't concretely memorable in that respect. And that's like, to be honest, that's really like one episode in particular I can point to and go, this did nothing for me. And I guess I would say that there are definitely moments in the show that do a lot for me. I really enjoyed the episode with the plane. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it was a really great episode.
Did
you like the episode with the beer when
yes.
they go out dancing?
That was I definitely.
Was that not the best scene in the entire show?
I fucking enjoyed that.
I loved it.
I was kind of like tearing up while watching that part. So
Me
like,
too.
yeah. So like, it does have peaks. It's just one of those weird things where like, it just didn't do enough for me to be like, plant my flag in the ground and go, this show is incredible and it's a testament to anime and everybody should watch it. I just can't be that enthused about it. But if like somebody brings up a conversation, I'll be like, oh, did you enjoy it? And be able to talk to them about it.
I will say that unless you're the kind of person who needs action, if you need, this is a really slow-paced show. You're just following 2 girls travel at their own pace through this barren world. They're the only characters most of the time. So if you're the kind of person who needs high-paced, dynamic action to follow a show, you should not watch this.
Yeah.
But if you want to experience an extremely well-crafted atmosphere, and enjoy the antics of 2 girls exploring this apocalyptic cityscape, then this is the show for you.
Dead ass world.
They run into 2 other people. That's it.
And a robot.
And a few robots.
Yeah. I guess one of the questions I want to say is, I think that when it comes to the appreciation of the show, I kind of read 2 beats. one of them is this show's really good at its execution and everything it has to present to you, to just like, here's this thing, consume it and enjoy it as is. And I think some people have kind of maybe gone a little bit carried away with the show and been like, oh my god, they're talking about these themes. And it's like, it's one of those things where I think that if a show or an anime or anything kind of broaches some serious thematic or otherwise subject matter like religion and war, death, what it means to have a family, stuff like that, I think sometimes if that show just touches on it, people kind of like run with that and go, oh man, it's this like, this is meaningful. But I think I would be much more in the camp of Girls Last Tour is really good at tackling this really interesting take on a typical premise and on its world building and on its character interactions and all the stuff it just delivers to you at face value. And if you start to do some headcanoning stuff with this, I can't, like, that's kind of where I wind up like going about the show, is if somebody's gonna be like, oh, it's like it's this, like you get like almost like the shades or something like talking about. It's like, I don't know. That's kind of what I thought.
One of my favorite aspects of this show was that they leave the atmosphere is surrounded by a mystery because it's an apocalyptic cityscape. So you're always left wondering what happened. Why are there relics of war everywhere?
Yeah.
How could this happen? And slowly being able to figure out that mystery is one of the most rewarding aspects of watching Girls Last Tour.
All right. I don't have any additional thoughts about Girls Last Tour. I still stand by saying that I wouldn't recommend it for somebody getting back into anime. I think that if you've gotten kind of used to, oh, there's more to the world of anime than Battle Shonen, then I would say give it a shot. Unfortunately, it's on Amazon, which is one of the harder streaming platforms to get to. Who did this show, real quick?
This show is made by White Fox. White Fox has 32 entries, and almost all of them are hugely successful properties.
What are some of those properties?
So White Fox did Steins Gate, Agame ga Kill, ReZero, Katana Gatari, Jormungandr, and they've got one of the better moe shows out there with Gochumon wa Usagi desu ka.
All right. So this
is a hard hitting studio that's just kind of come out of nowhere.
That's cool.
All of their shit is amazing.
And it's all stuff that if you've kind of gotten away from anime, you probably wouldn't know, but maybe your anime inclined friend would have told you, like, hey, you should watch Steins Gate.
Yeah, exactly. Steins Gate is a huge deal in the otaku culture.
Yeah. All right, ready to move on?
Yeah, let's move on.
All right, last, at least in our like little node section, we're going to talk about the winner of Best Drama, which is Mahotsukai no Yomi. I hope I didn't butcher that too badly. Or
no, that was pretty good.
Awesome. Or The Ancient Magus Bride, and which is kind of a misnomer because Celes, you want to explain?
Oh yeah, sure. So the Japanese title for this show is Mahotsukai no Yome, and Mahotsukai literally translates to mage or magician. So they just added in this phrase into the English, the ancient Magus's bride, to just make it more like a more aesthetically pleasing title. I don't know where they got ancient from.
This is like a common thing. And also, it's really funny when the show is like the original Japanese or otherwise creators are like, we're going to title this something in English, and it's just like, we're going to take a real cool sounding English word and make it just gibberish. And it's like, well, I guess this works both ways. But yeah, so The Ancient Magus Bride is a fantasy romance drama, I guess. Yes, it is drama. That stars Chise Hattori, who is a 15-year-old Japanese girl. She has reached a point in her life where,
But she's only 15.
yeah, I just, that's what Mal says.
Whoa, that's crazy. I did not
I
pick
know,
up on
I
this
know.
detail.
What I would say this: if you're returning to anime, one of my rules of thumb is you take the character's age and you add 4 to it, and it winds up more or less adjusting for depictions of characters at different ages. It's literally the only thing I can do to just like be like assuage that part of my mind that starts making red alert noises when I see things like this. Anyway, Chisori Hattori, a 19-year-old.
Smooth.
Right. In the context, which is modern day, is our modern world essentially. She has reached the point in her life where she is essentially depressed and has accepted a very strange gentleman's offer to sell herself into slavery. We're kind of only getting given glimpses of Chise's life before the slave auction, but essentially this starts off with a slave auction where Chise is voluntarily puts herself up for sale, and at the auction hall with a bunch of people in like what's that behind or eyes wide shut-esque masks. At this like we're all like horrible people, so we don't want to actually show our faces while we bid on human lives, human auction. In strides in this like 9-foot tall giant person in like sorcerer's robes, who strides up to the stage and goes, "I will put." Well, he doesn't say this voice.
He just like triples everyone's bid.
Up to like 5 million pounds, and the auctioneer's like, "All right, cool, sold." And as he approaches Chise, who is kind of like semi-horrified because I mean it's a giant person who's just said, "I'm gonna own you now." I don't know how else. Like, yeah, that's relatable in a weird way, I guess. As the person approaches her, the veil that's covered his face flies off, and like this person's face is a giant cow skull. Mm-hmm. So it's very like, oh, this is interesting. And everyone's kind of okay with this. So that's kind of like your first inclination that this is in a like mixed magic aware kind of like setting. And after the auction setup, this giant person who reveals himself to be his name is Elias Ainsworth. He reveals that he's a magus or a mage. They use the two terms interchangeably. He reveals that he's a mage, which is essentially a kind of spellcaster. In this world, there's two different kinds of spellcasters: mages and sorcerers. And mages are more like conduits for natural magic, whereas sorcerers are more kind of like we play against god types, where it's like we're more like the scientists who've like figured out how to do magic on our own, more or less. So
yeah, they're not very clear about it.
I mean, they
make the distinction, but they're like really fuzzy on the details.
Yeah, because we don't really get a ton of interaction with the sorcerers to start off. It's more with the mages that are part of the story. Mm-hmm. And we start to learn more about Elias, who is decidedly not a human being, and about this weird secret world of mages and sorcerers and magical creatures. It's very much the story kind of moves more or less centrally to modern day England, the English countryside. There's kind of a bit of a like magical creature of the week kind of aspect to it, where we're kind of like introduced to something pretty new. The story is very brisk. I would say in some respects it's a little too brisk in like, here's like 4 or 5 different specific interactions that Chise has, and then like you're like 8 episodes in and she's like recalling those instances fondly, and it's like, oh, that happened really quickly, and she's like reminiscing about this shit now. It's like, okay, But basically, the whole premise is that Elias wants to he wants to educate Chisei in the ways of magic because Chisei happens to be a magic sensitive kind of entity known as a sleigh buddy. It's essentially a term given to, I guess, human beings, but it's not really explained if it's more than just human beings who um, are
She's like
almost,
a hypersensitivity to mana.
yeah, basically, and like magical creatures want to all be her best friend, and they all are her best friend. It's really
They
cool.
they all want to be her best friend, but they also all want to kill her.
Yeah, well, at least the creepy fairies do. Uh, and like we kind of see Chisei's development. She picks up a few more friends along the way, and a familiar who's a very Bishi boy dog thing. It's really cool. And yeah, I mean the show's still pretty much ongoing. There's a hard cap, kind of like there's only so much time to get stuff done, kind of hanging overhead. So that's kind of like the like death is pretty much everywhere in this show. Like Chisei's family's all dead. There's a lot of people
Hmm.
who get killed in this show. It's pretty violent, but it's also just really well animated. I would say there might not be as many individual instances of like really captivating animation, but the world is really well lived in. I also really, for some reason, I really enjoy the animation around Chisei's reactions and eyes.
Oh
The,
yeah,
the,
they
it's,
did a really good job.
um, and for being kind of like the fish out of water protag that can sometimes be a little annoying because it's like just think using common logic and the rules of the world you live in, which I mean that's a common criticism of those kinds of characters. I actually really enjoy Chisei as a character, and um, yeah, most everybody in the show is cool. It does if you're kind of getting back into anime and one of your touchstones earlier on was Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. The show does a very similar thing wherein the serious beats of the very well done and detailed animation are often broken up by very childish and simple humor sequences. They're
Hmm.
adorable.
I noticed that.
Um, and it kind of helps with the tone of a very serious kind of show with a lot of people making furrowed brows and noises all everywhere.
I especially appreciate Chibi Elias when he
Yes,
appears.
he's so he's so adorable. And yeah, so this is interesting because this is a show that actually it aired in 2017, the first 12 episodes, which we both watched, and it's currently airing the next slate. I think it might have just ended its second season, and
It's
I
about to. I think they're 22 out of 24 right now.
yeah, and I would actually say of the shows we've talked about, in my opinion, I would recommend this show highly to people, especially if they were only somewhat kind of into anime because a lot of the designs and the aesthetic of Mage's Bride is steeped in like Western mythology and magic, and
Hmm.
the dragons are all like you know
The
like
dragons are great.
dragons are great. They look like they're out of like Harry Potter. It really is like, hey, do you kind of like anime? Did you also really like Harry Potter as a kid? I think you're probably gonna like Mage's Bride because it's really cool. It also is not an anime set in a high school or like a high school-esque
Mhm.
setting, Land of the Lustrous. Uh, and honestly, for me, I think it's really cool that this is another thing is like so the show won Best Drama, but it's definitely not like a critic's pick. It's definitely like a show that has a lot of build behind it, but it's definitely like an organically growing popular show. And it's really cool because like in as far as the premise has some problematic aspects, and it definitely is full bore into being a romance anime. Like there's no oh they were kind of flirting at first and then they're just like a respectable teacher student relationship. It's like no, she's definitely in love with him.
I
uh
do not like the romance in this show.
aside from that, and you know, in as far as gateway anime with kind of weird, bad romances, I mean, you could do worse than Magus Bride. Hello, SAO. And yeah, overall, I actually really like the show's execution. I think the world raises a shit ton of questions that I don't think the show is interested in answering, which is a little unfortunate. But yeah, what were your thoughts, Celes?
So I actually didn't like this show at first, but I came to grow. It grew on me as I watched it. So my first comment on this is going to be that a lot of people seem to think that Magus Bride is a dark show. It's not. And so they think they say it's dark because dark, death and decay happens in like
Right.
the first half of this show. And the first 6 or 7 episodes are definitely just like collections of fairy tales. And I will say, if you've read or are familiar with the Brothers Grimm, Magus Bride is about as dark as Brothers Grimm gets. Not terrible, but if you're not expecting it or ready for it, then it will shock you. It's a show that takes itself seriously, and the fairy tales that it
Yes.
tells in the first 7 episodes are really good. I really like them. Chise's character has a pretty good arc in the first 12 episodes. I liked seeing her kind of come into her own and find an independent spirit. And I liked... At first, one of my big problems with this show at first was that it seemed like Chise was a damsel in distress who was always going to be saved by Elias, who was OP in every situation.
Right.
But this show is it's more about Chise finding her boundaries, and Elias is just there to catch her when she stumbles, which she does often.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate it from that perspective.
I cannot. It would be really hard for me to defend the romance aspect of the show. I'm not gonna try. Like, I just
No.
that is beyond my like ability to reason. Like,
It's funny. So this show was sold to me on its. I didn't watch this until after the Crunchyroll Awards were finished, and so this show was sold to me on its romance, which is terrible. It's one of the worst romances I've ever seen. And second, on its drama, which is weird because the drama in Magus Bride is almost non-existent. Any drama that actually gets brought up is almost immediately resolved.
it is kind of weird that it won this. It's one of those weird like things where it's like we have to figure out a reward for it to win, because like the best parts of the show are really just more like the introspection and like conversations, and then like here's some dope ass magic kind of shit going on.
I actually think Magus Bride should have won Best Animation.
I could see that. I mean, like, yeah, it's the best combination of like multiple different kinds of styles of things going on. It just does not have those crazy looking Sakura moments that My Hero Academia had, so that's why it probably lost.
But there are still some really,
Yes.
really, really well animated scenes.
All right, let's not spoil those. But yes,
No,
you're
no.
absolutely right. Yeah, I don't really have any more thoughts about Magus Bride. I think it's very well done. I think I would recommend it more than I would give it an insanely high score, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like it's like, no, this is actually a pretty good place for somebody to start off of if they want to like know what the hell is going on in anime in 2017, especially if they've like finished like My Hero Academia and they're like, I want more. It's like, yeah, no, watch this.
What was your favorite episode in the first 12?
I mean, anytime that Nevin, the dope ass old dragon, shows up is good. So both, I think, episode 3 and 12.
Okay, cool.
Are good. I thought I thought the episode with the doomed lovers was like, it's like I've seen this done a million times at this point.
It's just a staple fairy tale.
And I think it literally was an episode of Mushishi. I think there's literally one exactly like this. And I was like, God damn. So I was like, fine. It's important for Chisei to like know, holy crap, this is the world I'm getting into, and also introduce the and kind of antagonist, who is probably one of the weaker aspects of the show because he reminds me so much of some very tropey villains.
Oh yeah.
Um,
The Cartiphilus, I
yeah.
think is the villain.
Don't
Very
say my
weak.
name because I'm like Rumpelstiltskin or something horrible. Yeah. I also
Bland as fuck.
I really hope we get to see more of the Fairy Queen and King. They're
Yeah,
funny.
they were great. One of my favorite moments was their introduction.
It made sense that the king would just be like a total panist man-child. Oh, that is very classic Western mythology kind of stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? Which episode did you like the most?
My favorite episode actually ended up being episode 12. It completely reformed my opinion of the series from being kind of negative to being overly positive.
It definitely like grants Chisei some like well-earned agency. It's a really good place for the show to end on its first season too. So
it gives her character arc a nice like capstone. And the other episode I really enjoyed was episode 9, which is the first time Chisei kind of goes out on her own without Elias, and it's just kind of like a slicey of lifey episode. It's kind of comfy, and
Elias is like, the house is so cold. I'm so lonely.
Yeah. So those are my favorite episodes.
Cool. All right. It sounds like we both have a pretty positive opinion of the show, but while recognizing where it fails.
I will add on. So I will make it concrete that I would definitely recommend this show to people who have been kind of out of anime for a while.
Word.
And one of the reasons for that is because this is by Wit Studio. Wit Studio is the studio who did Shingeki no Kyojin or Attack on Titan.
Which I dropped.
You're a monster, but I kind of understand.
They actually did another show we're going to talk about later on tonight, too, as well. So
nice.
Yeah. Oh God, they did everything for Attack on Titan.
They did.
Even the Chibi show. Good grief.
So yeah, like they. If you like the animation style of Attack on Titan, the Hotsukai no Yome is done by the same people.
Yep. All right. So before we talked about the anime that wound up being anime of the year and kind of the reason why we even know each other at this point. I wanted to kind of like leave there to be a little bit of room if there was any anime that came out this year that wound up not being hailed by the Crunchyroll Awards, at least. I think I asked, so when in planning this podcast, I asked you to come up with one, I came up with one, and it was one that we both liked, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of just do a little brief bit about the one that I watched, which is Recreators, which I think is every anime fan's favorite anime from last year's. That's something dumb, some dumb title like that. But anyway, Recreators, real quick, it's basically a really dope anime that is like, it's a funhouse mirror version of the isekai genre of anime that's been very popular the last almost 10 years at this point, which is basically like, hey, you're a dude that gets sucked into typically a JRPG video game world, but in this case, it's that world coming to the actual real world, but also characters from like popular anime and popular video games and other kinds of crazy, even popular manga characters. to start showing up in this world. And it's not actually, it's not, you're not gonna see like Ash Ketchum show up in this, because it has to be with characters that they can license. But they're all the characters that come from different shows are very loose. I won't say parodies, but they're very much like different iterations of character types from various kinds of. There's a magical girl character. There's like a grim, dark. I'm stuck in like a world of endless war, but I'm like the last princess of the kingdom, and I have to save. That sounds silly, but like the character's really well done in that.
Basically, a Gundam protagonist.
Well, I mean, there is like a Shinji clone too, but this is like more like a Eastern, like I ride a horse and I'm in a suit of armor kind of character. There's a Maid. There's like a almost like very quintessentially modern like sword woman that also has a mech kind of character too, and like a street tough character. And one of the best characters is like this character who can like manipulate probability by getting like two lies crossed together. It's really like in order to activate her powers, just like do a lie within a lie. It's great. Kind of like once you know that that's coming, you have to like you're trying to pay attention for when her power is going to work, and it's great. And basically they all show up in the real world, and everyone's like, "What the fuck is going on?" And it all has to do with this one character that's like, no one knows where the fuck this person's from. Like it's like this it's a character that doesn't belong into any established fiction, so that's like the mystery of the show. And the show is kind of like a weird meta love letter to like writing in anime and character design and like storytelling, and you get to see the interactions of some of the characters with their creators and stuff like that. And it's just like, for a lot of these characters, it's like, why would you do this? Why would you put me in this situation? Like those kinds of things. And I would say that Recreators, I mean, like, first off, the soundtrack is fantastic because it's scored by, oh my god, it's this. It's Hiroyuki Sawano, who does like all the like, hype, cool. All the like crazy hype anime rock soundtrack stuff. So that's one of the first things folks talk about.
She's really good.
And the look of the show is just really clean. All the fight scenes are really well done. The CG is really well integrated. There's some really nice character beats. I really enjoyed the interactions between Mamika and Alistaria, who are the magical girl and the grim dark knight princess gal, respectively. Like, I thought that was kind of a nice touch. It's one of those shows that probably would have benefited from a 24 episode run instead of a 22 episode run. Like, it might have been better stretched across 2 seasons with a little bit of time and planning, because my big criticism of the show is that it is crazy exposition heavy. Like, they're just scenes where one or two of the magic characters are just talking about everything that's going on, and they kind of like hand wave a lot of the like the magic systems and other systems involved in the show, especially in like the main climax. So you have to take a minute to kind of like wrap your head around what exactly is going on in their plan. But yeah, it's pretty good. I think it might have manipulated my emotions a little bit towards the end. I was like, I'm feeling things, but I don't know if I should be feeling things, but fuck it, I'm feeling things. It's really profound. And it's just full of like kick-ass action. I mean, where else can you go to see like a magical girl fight, a street tough, and then like a street tough with JoJo powers, and then like or with a stand, essentially. Yeah, no, that's all. I don't want to carry on too long because I know you didn't get a chance to see it, but it's one of those things where I probably would recommend to somebody coming back into anime, especially if they're more a fan of shonen type stuff, because it's it operates, I would say, at a very similar level to Bleach and Death Note, but not as grim dark. So yeah, that's Recreators. And what was the show you'd like to talk about?
Oh yeah. My show is Kemono Friends. Kemono Friends is it's a show about a girl wakes up in a savannah, has no memories or like concept of what's going on when she meets Serval-chan. Serval-chan is a friend, and the friends are girls. If you took an animal and you made that animal into a human girl, that would be the best description of what a friend is. All of the friends are named after animals that they are created from. And so Serval and our protagonist Kaban-chan kind of just go on adventures, meeting friends, solving problems, trying to figure out what kind of animal Kaban-chan is, because she doesn't know. This show is great. It has a wonderful atmosphere. It's fun and funny and comfy, and the mystery is always enticing. And it just makes for a really great viewing experience. This show was the most popular anime in Japan when it was airing in Winter 17, and there's a really good reason for that. With that said, the CG in this show is jarring as hell, but I will say that you get used to it within the first 2 episodes. If you finish episode 3 and you're still bothered by the CG, then I would say it's fine to drop Kemono Friends. So I would say that Kemono Friends is, if you like comfy slice of life shows with a little bit of mystery to it, Kemono Friends is a great show to watch. But I know I've said this a few times, but if you want the shonen and the hyper dramatic action, Kemono Friends might not be up your alley. It's definitely a moe show.
Okay. And by moe show, is there a tangible difference between moe and slice of life, or do they tend to be the same thing?
I would say that moe is a subgenre of slice of life, where moe as a genre is just focused on cute girls doing cute things.
Okay, so slice of life shows can like revolve around boys more. Like there are ones that almost exclusively revolve around boys, more or less.
Yeah, slice of life is a lot more broad.
Gotcha. And when you say that the CG is jarring, is it one of those things where the experience of watching this show, it goes from like, oh, this is bad, to, oh, this is bad, but I'm getting used to it, to, oh, this is so bad that it's part of the charm of the show?
No, I wouldn't say that at all. So if you watch anime often and you watch the first episode, you are going to be bothered as hell with the CG because it looks terrible. The studio that did this show, called Yao Yorozu, is a new studio. This is one of the first shows they did.
Is that a character in My Hero Academia? I think it's the name of one of the girls in the show. Okay, sorry. I'm continue, please.
But so the CG looks terrible when you first start. But by episode 3, like, you've watched the CG so much that it becomes natural. It doesn't look terrible anymore. And by the end of by episode like 4 or 5, I actually enjoyed the animation and the CG, which I thought was kind of surprising considering how much I fucking hated it at first.
All right. That sounds like a very interesting experience. It's funny because like my sell on Recreators is like, oh, this is really good, and I think it might get away with some of its weaknesses just by overloading on its strengths. And my read of your enjoyment of Kemono Friends is like, this is a show that once that you cross the barrier for entry, you can really buy into it. And
Exactly.
It's kind of funny that we both kind of gravitated to these two shows with some kind of obvious limitations to them, but like rewarded our investment in them. Um, was it the kind of experience where the longer you stood with the show, the more positive your appreciation of it became, or was it one where you were like, "Oh, I like this," and it like crested to a point, and then towards the end you were like, "Oh, now I'm noticing all the things that are wrong besides the animation," or was it just kind of like, "Oh no, it's just going straight up as much more and more and more enjoyment as it."
So I would say that this is kind of a show that once you start to enjoy it, it just gets better. All of the character dynamics and chemistry throughout the episodes, they're just so endearing, and if it's the kind of thing that you would enjoy, then you're going to enjoy Kemono Friends.
All right, that's about as simple a sell as possible. And then we can talk about the one show that probably should have won Best Comedy
It should have won Best Comedy.
If we're talking about a show that is the anime this year that full on made me belly laugh, we gotta talk about Kono Subarashi Sekai ni Shutufuku wo 2, or Season 2 of Konosuba, because we can just shorten everything. And oh my god, this show's phenomenal. Like this, I could barely like not praise. I mean, like I do think, I guess let's I'll do the premise and then we can kind of get talked into about it real quick. Basically, Konosuba is a comedic deconstruction of the isekai genre. Is the best way I can put it. Basically, as I kind of hinted at earlier, isekai is a genre of anime where a typically male protagonist either wakes up, finds himself through technological device, transported to a JRPG, like Final Fantasy style world, where normally they discover that they're crazy overpowered, or they become overpowered very quickly, and are able to kind of inflict their will on the world and change things and solve problems and stuff like that. And I think there's been at least one or two anime in recent years that have started to like play with the trope a little bit more. ReZero was really popular, and it's a more serious deconstruction of the genre. Whereas Konosuba is just like, let's have as much fucking fun with this premise as possible with the the worst people imaginable too, because it's like one of those things where it's like a lot of the time you wind up with people in the fantasy world that are just like really boilerplate, upstanding people. So it's really funny when this show involves a cast of characters, especially the main cast. They're all incorrigible and fallible, and it's all played for laughs, and it's great. So our protagonist is Kazuma Sato, who's like a 18-year-old NEET, or basically a closeted shut-in who just plays video games. And we're introduced to him, and he's like, "Oh, I have to go outside and go to the countryside to get this exclusive game." And on his way back, I think it's a Yu Yu Hakusho reference. This is the first one I can think of that went with this premise.
It's definitely a Yu Yu Hakusho.
Okay, good. In a reference to Yu Yu Hakusho's beginning, Kazuma notices a girl about to get hit by, who's not paying attention, is about to get hit by a car, and heroically springs into action, thinking he saved that girl's life. But as is revealed by the goddess of the afterworld, Aqua, he basically completely failed at his attempt to try and save this girl. The girl was never in any danger, and he died in the most embarrassingly awful way imaginable. I think he shit his pants, and everyone just like.
She says she points out to him that his parents found out that he died of shock and laughed at his dead body.
So So we're now here at this point in the quote unquote afterlife where it's almost like a way station, and Aqua's like, she's like, hey, I kind of brought you here because there's an option B to being dead, which is I manage this world where, because of the premise of the world, we really could use another hero, essentially, in order to rectify the problem, which is killing this Dark Lord, or the Demon King. That's right, the Demon King.
Go to the isekai.
Yeah, basically. And he's like, oh, it's like a RPG style world, cool. But throughout this conversation, Aqua, who's this goddess, is very vindictive and has a lot
She's
of
a
fun.
terrible person.
She's a terrible person. She has a lot of fun at Kazuma's dead expense. So, using a loophole in the condition that she says, if you'd like to, I'll send you to this world instead, and you can take one thing, whatever the hell you want. And he uses the loophole of that premise to say, I'm going to take you with me. So, because he's a vengeful dickhead. And so the two of them get transported to this magical world. Aqua retains some of, or I think most of her powers, but can't actually leave the plane of the world, and mostly is just kind of a lout, kind of a layabout, I don't really care anymore kind of person about the whole experience, and a giant crybaby when things don't go her way. And,
she's very vain, too.
Oh, she's incredibly vain. And they are joined eventually by the explosion magician Megumin, who is a girl who only does explosion magic, but her explosion magic is so powerful and takes up so much mana that she collapses every time she uses it. She can only use it like once a day. And she's so addicted to this magic and its destructive capacities that she's essentially useless. But she worms her way onto their group. And then they're also joined by the... Do you want to talk about Darkness? Because
I love Darkness.
I'm going to feel weird talking about Darkness.
So Darkness is a hardcore masochist. She's introduced into the story as a crusader. So she's a female knight. And she can't hit anything. And all she wants to do is get hit because she's a masochist. And when she's introduced into the story, Kazuma already has Aqua and Megumin, and he's just like, this is a bad idea. I'm getting vibes from this girl. Something is not right. It's going to be terrible. And of course he's 100% accurate. She's a masochist. She gets off to getting hurt.
And the show just like delights in taking the most absurd directions with very rote, basic fantasy world building premises. Like one of the first experiences where I just died laughing was there was one task, because part of they join a guild and the guild has tasks and they're able to accrue wealth and so on and so forth and try to attain status. And the thing is that because Kazuma didn't ask for anything that actually be beneficial for the game directly, he's starting off at ground zero or level 0 essentially. And unlike every other protagonist of isekai genre, there's no like cheat way to like get to being overpowered. So you actually see him grow throughout the series in terms of the skills he acquires, and you also see the applications of those skills, which range from the uncomfortable to the absolutely hysterical. I'm just to be honest, Konosuba is the kind of show that if you just turn off the critical and pearl-clutching parts of your brain, rewards you so much.
What I would say that this show is equally rewarding if you're looking at it with a critical eye.
Really?
Because the comedy is just great.
I mean, it is. It definitely like traipses in a lot of...
This show is also, I would say, Konosuba is 10 times better if you've seen Sword Art Online, because it's a direct parody of that show.
I mean, it's a parody of like just fantasies, like especially like male driven, like I would like to be a knight in ancient times kind of fantasies too.
Yeah.
people that love to live in a video game. It's like, here's like both the best and worst possible situation for you, and like how would you handle it? And Kazuma, it's funny because Kazuma tries to handle it well, and not everything is his own stupid fault. Like most of it's not his own stupid fault, but he has to
Most
deal.
of it's Aqua's fault.
Most of it's Aqua's fault. I love the trait where it's like, oh, she naturally attracts undead creatures, and that's like, and that's like deployed multiple times impressively. Where you're like, oh, of course it was her fault. And also the show just delights in just like taking like what would be like dramatic reveals, or like it basically likes to subvert everything possible with the genre. Just like, here's this random shit that you wouldn't expect until like way later in the series, or like something to that extent. And it also never, okay, I would say that it pretty much doesn't lose steam up until the end of season 2, where there's kind of like a journey and a multi-episode arc in a different city that I
really enjoyed the Axis cult arc.
I didn't. I was after the first episode with everybody trying to
Axis cult members were like one of my favorite aspects of season 2.
I got it was like just 1 or 2 episodes too many in that region, and I just wanted to get the fuck out and back to the main city for more adventures. Because once I realized that this is where it was going to end on the season, I was like, oh. I wanted something, I guess, slightly different. That arc also badly sidelined Megumin. Like she was just not involved at all, really, in that arc. So yeah, I was sad for Best Girl not not getting to shine. No, oh my god, this show is just it once you've just become I can't really. I would like to recommend it for folks who are getting back into anime, but like if you've just acclimated yourself to the tropes, good and bad, in anime, I cannot recommend it highly enough. But it might be hard for me to recommend to somebody that like their last experience was watching Attack on Titan or like something like that, and they finally came back to anime after like 5 years or something like that. You know, it's
really?
I don't know, but that's just me. I tend to be more safe with my recommendations. It's like, here are the things that other people also say are really good, not just me, but like that'll be me sometimes. So in this case, it's like I really enjoyed it. It is uproariously funny. I guess people don't like the art because it doesn't stay on model, which is the dumbest criticism in the world, because the whole point, just like I guess some people talk.
Okay, if you're a Sakuga nerd,
yeah, no, I know,
maybe.
No, like my point I was gonna say was like, you know, we talked about, you know, My Hero Academia winning Best Animation and how good Maid's Bride was, and they're both shows that break away from the character models constantly, and they're both really well animated. So I don't know, and maybe it might just be like one of those things where it's like the counter criticism to something is a lot more heard than the actual criticism, because I really enjoy the way Konosuba is designed. It is pretty much, it's very much like One Piece, where it's like we're gonna take all these aspects of anime and like dial it up to 11. But instead of it being like drama and action and whatever kind of in One Piece, it's more like we're gonna do a spy arc, or we're gonna do like an arc in an ancient fairy tale. Like instead of like that getting dialed up, instead it's just like we're gonna take all these aspects of a JRPG and dial it to 11. The world building's really well. The world is really well lived in. It feels very real and detailed.
All the quests are really well designed too. Like,
yes,
anyone who's ever played an RPG has definitely done quests like these.
I cannot believe how many times I got away with the frog beat joke. Oh my god!
Somehow they kept making it better. It was just like, this is great.
Just popping out.
What did you think about Union in season 2? Union being Megumin's friend,
that's probably the worst.
Who's always challenging her to duels.
I mean, she's dumb and she's a nice little like spot. character, but not.
Everyone I've talked to says she's either great or she's terrible.
She feels very inessential to the show, so I'm just kind of, I don't really have thoughts beyond like the show probably would not suffer without if she wasn't in it. That's my opinion. What about you?
I was not a fan of Union. She got left behind, and they devoted too much time during the Axis cult arc to just showing Union standing at the gate to Cosmo's house, and I was just like,
yeah, and the thing that's okay, and yeah, there you go. I guess it's part of my criticism of that arc too, because again, that could have been something with Megumin. Like imagine if they left Megumin behind on the trip, because she's completely inessential to that entire.
She's worthless in Axis. The only thing she does is she does a pretty good explosion during the last fight.
Sure, and that could have been Union and Megumin showing up to town, or like Megumin being like, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to like figure out a way out here. Get this person away from me. But yeah, that's about it. And yeah, I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say about Konosuba. It is the intro is also just incredibly well done. I am a big fan of what I guess you could call filler-esque moments in opening themes, where it's like, oh hey, we're not only just going to give you kind of like the bare essential premise of the show, but we're going to kind of hint at there being other adventures and shit going on in the world, because it makes the world feel more lived in.
Yep. The Konosuba, both Season 1 and Season 2 have wonderful OP and ED segments.
Yep.
With my personal standout being the Season 2 ending.
Word. I guess
my other comments for Konosuba 2 is that Darkness gets tons of time to shine in Season 2. The Axis cult members are amazing, and I think it's hilarious. I enjoy how they deal with the ramifications of what happened in Season 1.
Yes. Hey, continuity! Who knew?
Yeah, and I will say that unless you absolutely hate having fun, you should watch Konosuba.
Awesome. Well, the next show we are going to talk about has definitely, if you really want to have fun. No, actually, so I think we're probably going to cut this into two, because we've been talking for an hour and a half, and I think that's probably good enough for at least the first episode. So I think we can probably do what we want to talk about. We could add a little bit more time to talking about a certain Maid in Abyss to a later time, as well as talking about, at that point, a lot of completed 2018 anime too. So, with that, I guess, what do you think, Celes? I think it's a pretty good point to stop at. Yeah?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Okay. So this will be part one of our initial episode, or really
two-part special.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's episode 1, so definitely come back for episode 2, because we're gonna kickstart things by talking about what Crunchyroll voted as anime of the year, what you should have voted as anime of the year, what Celes and I voted as anime of the year. A little show called
the Reddit r/anime of the year,
Maid in Abyss, and we'll probably talk about that for like a half hour. And just how much that show, among all these other shows that we all really like, just stood head and shoulders above the rest. If you did enjoy this episode of the podcast and you're listening to it on whatever service I wind up managing to get it hosted on, and you want to send in questions or thoughts or whatever you want to, if you think that you really enjoyed it, yeah, definitely contact us at our email, which is lapsedfancast@gmail.com. It's lapsedfancast@gmail.com. I'm on the Maid in Abyss Discord as Fro, the emissary of handholding, and
FBI.
and on the other interwebs on Twitter at a Fro among few with underscores between Fro among and few. I'm gonna start probably talking more about anime on Twitter too, but most of the time I'm talking about sports. We all talked about sports anime, right, Celes?
Oh, let's not.
At some point, we're gonna do like a watch through of a sports anime, like and like do like a critique about it.
That'd be fun.
Do you have any? Is there anywhere you want folks to reach out to you if you want to?
I'm also on the Maid in Abyss, the r/Maid in Abyss Discord server, which you can find an invite link to at reddit.com/r/Maid in Abyss. I am not on Twitter, but will probably eventually find my way there.
Cool.
So yeah, definitely come find me on Discord.
Awesome. And with that, thank you all very much for tuning in to episode 1 of the Lapsed Fancast. I'm Fro.
And I'm Celes.
Signing out.